I watch so often when I'm working with companies, the leadership, they want to be liked. And I get it.
Yeah.
I do too. I think naturally as human beings, we want to be liked,
Yeah.
but that's not what a leader is. So we're clear. Somewhere along the line, I feel like people have felt, leadership isn't about challenging, it's about being liked. And it's not.
Welcome to the Let Me Save You 25 Years podcast. I'm your host, Shawn David Nelson, sometimes known as that love sack guy. I get asked all the time, how do you maintain control of your company if you don't own 51%? It's a very specific question, but it comes up all the time. As people raise money, they get nervous about, taking on new ownership, new investment. It can dilute your ownership. It can take away your absolute control. I have lived with this dynamic from the earliest days. We had to raise venture capital just to stay alive. We had to move on to private equity. Now we're a publicly traded company. I've got thousands of investors to answer to. My answer to this question, how do you maintain control if you don't have 51% ownership or better? Be Michael Jordan. That's the answer, right? Like, who controlled the Chicago Bulls? Was it the coach? Was it the owner in the 90s? Or was it Michael? Who called the shots? My guess is if you could be inside that locker room, if you could be, courtside, Michael Jordan maintained plenty of control over the Bulls because he was invaluable. So how do you do that? You got to make yourself invaluable. And you do that not by virtue of authority, title, ownership. You do it by being Michael Jordan. And that's not easy to do, right? It requires a lot of discipline. It requires a lot of hard work. And that's, I think, why people shy away from it. They'd rather just own the company. They'd rather just be the boss. They'd rather just be the leader, right? But Michael Jordan was the leader of that team, I believe, because he was qualified to lead. And he made himself qualified through his work ethic, through his perseverance, through his dedication, obviously leveraging some talent, sometimes even a little bit of luck along the way. And of course, surrounding himself with amazing people. And that's what we're going to talk about today on this podcast with an amazing guest who is a leadership coach himself, an amazing author. We talk about how amazing it is to see what can be accomplished if no one cares who gets the credit. We talk about don't fall into the comparison game. Just play your best game. That's the secret to feeling satisfied and happy in life. There's something magical about being under pressure with great people around you, right? It's less about being super rich or super successful as it is about embracing that journey, especially if you get to do it with great people. Don't wish it away. We talk a lot about parenting and how not to rob your children from the challenges that will help them grow. As a leader, you may not always be liked, but that's okay. And if you want to help the people who look up to you, ask for permission to give advice, because unsolicited advice is never appreciated. We have the amazing JM Ryerson on the podcast today. You are going to love this. Check it out. Today's guest is a man who lives and breathes the idea that being good just isn't good enough. You've got to be great, and not just when the spotlight is on you. He is a high performance coach, leadership expert, and the kind of guy who could turn a water cooler chat into a life-changing pep talk. I've brought him on the show today to talk about the Shawnism, be Michael Jordan. Not just showing up to play, but becoming the MVP of your organization, your team, and your life, making yourself invaluable, even if you already own the team. So if you've ever wondered how to go from just being a part of the roster to being completely invaluable, buckle up, because he's here to tell us exactly how that's done. Please welcome the one and only J.M. Ryerson.
Hey, brother, it's so good to be here. I love the topic of the show, and so interesting we were talking about our kids off air, because I talked to both my boys about what you're talking about, so much of that work that goes into it. So it's a fascinating topic, man, and obviously he's an icon. that we have all looked up to. So I love where this is going to go.
So without thinking too hard, when you heard the topic, be Michael Jordan, what was the first thing that came to mind for you?
Just determination. I think so often people think like the 6 rings and perfection. I don't think that. When you really think of Jordan, you think of so many times that I think of all the times of the failure. I think of all the times of the additional work that he put in. And I think when Kobe died, that's when I heard so much more about how he was inspired because of Michael Jordan. And so I just love that idea that you get to show up as the version of your best self, but it's not just natural. You have to put in the work. This is something that you're doing behind closed doors. So we saw this final product of 6 rings, right? Undefeated in champion. He's 6-0 when it came to finals. But what we didn't see is the hours and hours and hours that he put in, the amount of coaches that he had. That's what's amazing to me. I mean, you think about it, he had a fitness coach, he had a nutritionist, he had his Phil Jackson as a coach, he had another strength and conditioning coach, he had a stretching coach. He had so many coaches behind him. So, yes, he gets all these individual accolades, but if you actually look at all that went into it and the team around him, that's how all organizations are. Nobody's self-built, and nobody's, so that's what I think of when I think of Michael Jordan.
Wow. So many components we need to pick apart here. Yeah. This, the way I came to this Shaunism, as I shared earlier, really came from my having to raise money for Lovesac, having to give up equity in the company and learning how to remain in control when maybe, you don't own 100% of the company anymore. You can't just control it on authority alone. You have to be able to control it based on merit, and that's how I view Jordan, right? In that organization. Like, it's easy to look at the Bulls, in the 90s and say, okay, well, who ran that place? Right? Like, was it the coach? Was it the owner or owners? Was it Jordan? And which one of them had the most influence? And my guess is, I don't think, if you polled 100 people and asked them, my guess is, those 100 people would say Jordan. Now, neither you or I probably know the inner workings of that organization in particular, but it's not hard to imagine just how much control and influence, you get when you're the Jordan of your organization, whether or not you own the team, whether or not you run the team as a coach or whatever. And that's where I'm coming from, right? Is that you want to have influence in this world. Forget, it's easy for people to become a victim and be like, well, if only I was the boss, if only I ran the show, if only I called the shots, if only I had this or that title. You'd be shocked what you can achieve inside of any organization. I'm not just talking about work, right? It could be your church organization, your PTA, your kids, teams, whatever it is, the teams you play on. If you can put yourself in a position where you're invaluable, where people need you, and the only way to do that, I believe, is to bring it. I mean, at the end of the day, we can argue Kobe, different players over the years, but Jordan stands out obviously as I think to most as the GOAT, because he just always showed up.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And what's interesting? As you're talking, I was thinking of this quote, and it's amazing what can be accomplished if no one cares who gets the credit. Now, let's look at Jordan's career for a second. Early, when he first came into the league, before Pippen was on the team, he was averaging like 33 to 35. Like it really was, put the team on my back. I have this, right? Insert Pippen, insert Bill Cartwright, Horace Grant, the various role players into it. And now Jordan is still averaging 30, but now it's not so much about the individual accolades as it is the end result and getting past the Detroit Pistons. Now, I'm a basketball nerd, so I remember all of these things. Like my kids, I have an argument with my kids all the time on LeBron Jordan, right? And you said to us, it's pretty indisputable, in my opinion. Jordan is the GOAT. But I think why he is he literally, if you watch his career, he was always an incredible scorer, but at the end of the day, he cared about the end result. He wasn't saying, "Give me all the MVPs." He wanted the end result, which was a championship. And Tim Grover, if you ever read his books, he talks about this whole idea of what it really took to win. Both in Winning was one of his books, and I can't remember the other one, but it just the mindset that Jordan had. And I think that's something that, gosh, if you applied that sort of determination, grit, and then also have the ability to check your ego at the door and say, do I really care about having my name and the accolades, or do I care about the end result, which is the championship? I think we would all agree, as you did with Lovesack, it's like, look, I want to be an integral part of it. I want to have influence, but I'm going to do that based off merit. This is truly a meritocracy. And how he did that is he was the first to show up and the last to leave in the gym. Are people really doing that in their own organization, or are they kind of coasting? And there's lots of careers where guys coasted and they don't have the 6 rings like Jordan does. So I don't know. There's a lot to break down in this idea. And the other thing I think that's so fascinating is also catching the breaks. If you watch the movie that came out with him and Matt Damon, or I think it was Matt Damon, when they were doing Nike and Ben Affleck, it was like his mom was such an integral part of the Jordan brand. Well, that was a huge break, the way that he did that, which greatly influenced his business world today. So it was a huge break that his mom happened to be a huge influence on. So I don't know, brother. I think there's being prepared. I think there's surrounding yourself with the right people, and really just having that focus on what are we trying to accomplish here.
Yeah, I love the idea of staying focused on the end result, because it really, the cool thing about Jordan, to use him and to use him as a case study, is that the paint is dry, right? Like we can look at it from a distance now, and in the heat of something, I think part of the reason you have debates about LeBron and Jordan is because LeBron's fresh. LeBron's here. We can see him play. We've seen his results, so they're more fresh in our mind. And as an individual contributor, it's easy for people to lean on, the specific performances that they get to see, or the specific stats. Where at the end of the day, the reason most of those debates fall the way of Jordan, at least and look, I'm not even a huge basketball guy, but as I observe this, right, is because it's hard to dispute the 6 championships. Like at the end of the day, and by the way, that's bigger than Jordan. Like the championship it's bigger than Jordan's stats, and it's what lives on today, right? Like the average person, I don't think, can quote most of Jordan's individual, because by the way, there's tons of them. I mean, blocks, steals, offense, defense, most points, all these things. But, once you get past the temporary nature of so many of those performances, you get the combined effort and indisputable evidence that comes from 6 world championships. And that involved the whole team. And there's no way around it. And so this idea that we can both be obsessed with our own performance and putting up the biggest numbers, and being obsessed with winning, while staying focused on an end result that benefits everyone. And that is something that, even if there's some self-centeredness required, or some, personal focus required to drive results on our own behalf, when everyone knows and can see that your focus is on an outcome that benefits everyone, people can get behind even, the, let's call it the self-centeredness it takes to drive personal performance. And I think that that's something that we can see now from a distance in Jordan's career, and is a great lesson for all of us who are trying to, figure out how to balance our ego, which drives us forward to achieve, along with, of course, the need to enroll everyone around us to help us achieve.
Yeah, the other thing that's really interesting. I know you're coming in from Utah, and I go back to Game 6 of 1998.
Oh
Okay,
god. Oh
right.
god. I can see it like in my mind,
Byron
burned into.
Russell just getting pushed off, right? But that was the flu game. The dude had 103, I think, temp. And if anybody's had that temp, you don't want to move. You can't move. He played a professional basketball game at the highest level. And this is what you said earlier that I love. You're just like, he wasn't a victim of circumstance. He didn't sit there and complain and say, woe is me. I'm sick, so I'm not going to play. No, he played at the highest level that he could. In fact, to all Utah fans, literally, he buried him, right, with that
Yep.
jump shot at the
Yep.
key. And but he chose to be a victor, not a victim. And it's one of the things I talk about so often, Shawn, because we have it all the time. You can be a victim or a victor. Look, it was out of his control. He got sick. There's nothing else he can do. So he can either complain about it or he can go out and just give it his all. And I think that's something that doesn't get, we talk about the 6 championships, but you look at that game. Imagine being 103-degree temp and even trying to run down a basketball court.
And by the way, no one would have faulted him if he sat it out. Like, I mean, like crap happens. You're sick, you're feverish. Like, it's too bad. And who knows what the outcome would have been. I think there's a high likelihood Utah could have pulled it off without Jordan in the game, right? I think it came down that close with Jordan. But do we have the perseverance and the mental energy to push through anyway? And I can tell you from my own career, if you're familiar with the Lovesack story, Lovesack's been a saga. We've been through every kind of up and down. And to this day, I'm 26 years in. And sometimes I say to my friends, I'm as embarrassed as I am proud that I'm still running the same company I started like in college, right? In the sense that, God, we should have made it even further already. We should already, I should already be a bazillionaire. I should already be on my 3rd company. At the same time, I kind of love that I still have to, like right now, Lovesack is in a place where we're both big and we're small at the same time. We're like ranked number 19, the 19th biggest furniture retailer in the United States of America. But everyone above us sells every product in the home. We sell 2. So to be at the scale we're at is pretty remarkable. At the same time, we're dinky. We're sub $1 billion. We're approaching that. In the world of AI and tech, it's not even on the map. But at the same time, I have a lot of friends who've exited their companies. They are bazillionaires. And I love that I continue to have to wake up every day and find the inner strength personally to not fold under pressure, because right now in the home category, in the furniture category, it's the worst it's ever been in my entire 26 years. It's going on its 4th year of really tough headwinds in this category post-COVID, right? Because everyone's buying couches during COVID, and post-COVID, it's slower. Now, we're doing better than all the rest, but it's still like the worst time. And here I am, really never taking my chips off the table, because that's how I've chosen to live, because that's how that's how my teammates are. Like, they're all in, like they don't even have the chips that I have necessarily. But I love that it pushes me to continue to, even at this age, dig down deep and wake up and face another challenge and face a tough quarter, face a tough year. And I love that. I'm saying for my life. And I think, you can ask yourself, are you the player who gets the 103 fever knowing that you're a key part of the team that sits it out because you have the excuse, or do you find a way to dig deep and power through anyway? And by the way, it's one thing to power through a game. It's another thing to power through a year or a decade. And that is something that, I continue to face in real time in my own life.
Gosh, brother, you're bringing up such a huge thing, and the comparison game, right? This happens, I think, to any of us that we see our buddies, like you said, that have exited for, hundreds of millions, $1 billion, which is awesome, by the way. Congratulations. And I will also tell you, I've exited 3 companies myself, and the grass is not always greener on the other side.
Right.
I will tell you, I love what I do now. I absolutely love it. But do I miss the third company or the first company? Some of the culture and just getting our teeth kicked in and not knowing what the heck we're doing. I miss that so much. And yet I remember wanting to exit because that was something that, I strove for. And it was like, you worked hard, so you should get this reward. But it's often not what you think it's going to be.
That's
so
right.
I think there's a ton. And look, next year you might say differently. You might say, I want to take my chips off the table. I want to spend more time with my family, whatever. But I'll tell you what, if this feeds your soul, if it absolutely fulfills you on a daily basis, dude, don't stick with it. Because I will tell you, there are companies I wish I could go back to because it was so much fun. And I'm not talking during the great times. I'm talking about when you're having to figure it out. So I love that you bring that up. And I think often if you ask professional athletes, since we talked about Michael Jordan, they will often talk about the bus rides, the plane flights, the practices. They don't talk about the pinnacle of the championships. They talk about that camaraderie, that team atmosphere. And to have that at Lovesac, to have that great team surrounded by you, brother, there's some definite envy on my end to say, hold on to that, because that's
I
beautiful.
agree. And this is my message to anyone listening. It's not about Lovesac, really. It's not about the company or the organization, whatever you're involved in. It's about the struggle. And if you find yourself in a place where you can be under pressure and somehow be making a living doing it and be under pressure with great people around you, that's the key. I'm telling you, that is the key to happiness and satisfaction. And everything else that's tempting, the big payout, the bigger paycheck, the bigger title, whatever it is that's tempting you away. If you find yourself in a scenario where you can experience pressure, just like Jordan felt in Game 6 of in 1998, under great duress, even and feeling sick, but he had the great people around him and he was making a good living. Don't wish it away. Even when you feel like wishing it away, fight that urge. And that's why I talk about it kind of openly. Because by the way, it is that kind of pressure that cooks a Michael Jordan. And there is no other kind of pressure that can cook a Michael Jordan. And this is why, like, when it comes, for instance, even to, as you get older, you worry about your kids, you think about your kids, you plan ahead, you do financial planning. I have lots of debates and discussions with some of my friends who have more money than me or who have different opinions than me anyway. I don't know if I want to leave my kids any money at all. And it's not because I don't love them. It's because, I don't really have that to fall back on. And I don't know that I want to rob them of the same opportunities to become like a whole person, to become their own version of Michael Jordan, whatever that is. I don't know if I want to rob them of that opportunity by giving them some kind of safety net, because I didn't have a safety net. But that's not fair. I had a little bit of one in the sense like, hey, worst comes to worst, I can still, go crash at my mom's house. So I have some kind of safety net, but I don't come from any kind of money or this or that. And so I think we got to be really thoughtful about and that's how I view it, is like robbing our kids of the same opportunities we had to grow. That's how I view, money for the next generation, as an example.
Oh, brother. Now you want to talk about fascinating, because you and I similar age, I think, grew up and, drinking water from the hose, and we were that come home
Mm-hmm.
at dark, right?
Yeah.
Now, our kids' generation, and again, I'm guilty as a parent, we want to protect them and we almost want to put them in a bubble. And yet that does rob them of so many things. They are so capable of doing incredible things. And yet, this idea, and I don't know when it started, the whole everybody gets a trophy idea, the whole like everybody is, included. Look, that's not life. And that is robbing them of really learning how to fall down, skin their knees, bang their head, and be able to get back up. And I'm guilty of it. My wife and I talk about this all the time, because you want, as a parent, to protect them. Of course you do. That's your kids, and they're amazing. You want to make sure they have better than you, and yet allow them to fall down and get back up again. So we talk about it all the time as well. My wife came from money. I did not. It'll be interesting, because my chore that I had for them this summer, I was like, look, you're going to build a business. Now, I went and worked as a lifeguard or worked for the city. That was what I did as a kid. But I was like, okay, you're an entrepreneur. That's what you want to be. Go build a business and figure it out. And I'm not here to save you. Like, it's on you. So it is a fascinating subject, brother, because you don't want to rob them. I think I love that terminology. Don't rob them of it. And yet give them the guidance that, of course, maybe we didn't have as kids. I know certainly my parents didn't have as entrepreneurs. They weren't entrepreneurs. So I can give them that guidance, but let them skin their knees and get banged up a little bit.
So how do you think we create an environment? Let's start with our kids, then we'll move on to company cultures and leadership. But how can we create an environment to give our kids the best chance at becoming a Michael Jordan in their own lives, right? Whether that be in their career, whether that be as a successful parent, whether that, whatever, give them a shot at becoming that. What are the ingredients necessary to giving our kids that shot?
One of the words, it's not a sexy word, but it's accountability. It is such a thing that it's the one thing that I will say, both my parents, but certainly my dad, he's like, look, do what you say you're going to do, period, point blank. And if you don't, own it. And that's one of the things that I think, Jordan certainly had, with his dad. He talks about openly with his brother. He had such a sheer amount of accountability put on him. And it's one of those words that people kind of like, they're almost repellent. It's like, oh, accountability, gross. It's an incredible word. Who doesn't want to be held accountable to showing up as the best version of them? And he was fortunate enough to have an older brother, Larry. It was his name, Jordan's older brother, that really held him accountable. Had his dad and mom that held him accountable. It's the same thing for our kids. It's the same thing as to not let them off the hook. And when they screw up, there's repercussions, man. Like, that's the way the world works. So I think in large part, it's just holding our kids accountable. I was telling you off air, my oldest son plays tennis. It's one of the best games because they are out there by themselves. And you mentioned your kids play tennis. There's no saving your kids. There's no coaching your kids.
Yeah.
They are out there by themselves having to figure it out. I absolutely love it. And does it lead to some really hard things to watch as a parent? Dude, it's brutal. But it has led to some real character building. So I don't know if you've experienced the same with your kids, but I absolutely love watching my kids struggle. And because here's the lesson, we're going to talk about it afterwards, about how he can get back up and show up again the next day. I'm not going to coddle him and say, oh, you should have won and given up. No, you got beat by a more prepared, more talented, whatever it might be. player across the net. That's okay. Now it's your opportunity behind closed doors to put in the work so that it doesn't happen next time. It's just a
Yeah.
learning lesson.
Yeah. I love that. I think I love that lesson. So finding ways to create opportunities for our kids to uh, be accountable. And that can happen through sports. That can happen through hobbies. Obviously that happens with school, right? They have the chance to earn the grades or not earn the grades. And I think we have to play our role. I love that you call out Larry as Jordan's brother. You know, he didn't do this alone. Like, it's okay as a parent to parent. It's okay to hold your kids accountable to their grades and not just sort of chalk it up to, well, you know, they're finding their way. And obviously we want kids to become, and not just kids. I think we want people around us, people we work with, to become accountable on their own volition. But even in the case of the great Michael Jordan, he had people around him helping him to develop, it sounds like, that ability. And I think so that's both putting them in a position to develop that for themselves as well as playing a role of holding others accountable. What else can we do, you know, for our kids or for our let's call it employees or coworkers or partners to put people around us in a position to become their best selves, to become their Michael Jordan? Anything else you can think of?
I think of the leadership around him, and so Phil Jackson was Jordan's coach that in the NBA, and then he had Dean Smith at North Carolina. And one of the things he talks about with both of them is how much he didn't like them at certain times. The leadership that both Phil Jackson and Dean Smith showed to Jordan was it's as a leader, you're not always going to be liked, and that's okay. I watch so often when I'm working with companies, the leadership, they want to be liked. And I get
Yeah.
it. I do too. I think naturally as human beings, we want to be liked,
Yeah.
but that's not what a leader is. So we're clear. A leader's job is to influence and to really help them perform at their highest level. That doesn't mean always, patting them on the back. You should recognize when they do things well, but it's also an opportunity to challenge and let them know that, hey, you have another gear. Somewhere along the line, I feel like people have felt, leadership isn't about challenging, it's about being liked. And it's not. When you're a leader, your job is really to get the most out of that player, that kid, that your coworker, whatever hat they're wearing. As a leader, your job is to push and challenge them to get them to show up as the very best that they can. And sometimes that's going to lead to them not liking you, and that's 100% okay. And I want leaders to hear that that's okay. Your job, that's literally your job. If you want Lovesac in your company's case, or Let's Go In my company's case, if we want to be the best, that's going to require, really some pushback and having honest, crucial conversations about how we can perform better. And I really want people to do that in their own companies and their as a parent, because it's so much more rewarding than just saying, oh, it's okay, giving some excuses why they didn't perform. No, let them know you didn't perform. What can we do about it so it doesn't happen again next time? And then just let them know I'm here to support you, but I'm not going to do the work for you. So
Yeah.
I think that's just a huge part of being a leader, and something that I know my boys, if they're listening to this right now, they're like, gosh, Dad, really? You're talking about this again? Yeah. That's to me how important this is as a leader, because I pride myself in that leadership role. I don't know, brother. What have you felt at
Oh, I love
Lovesac?
that. I think that it's this, you know, that's funny is it's not so different, right? Leading your children or leading a team, employees, even like a sports team. It's all leadership. And I love the idea as a leader of being provoking and challenging um, in a way that makes people uncomfortable, as long as you're checking yourself that you're doing it in a humane and and even a kind way whenever possible. And that's can be really hard for people to reconcile. But when I say that, I don't mean, I think we mistake kindness for easiness. And I think that you can be very challenging and even pointed with people and make them, maybe in the moment they don't like you and they don't like what you're saying because it's critical. But as I sometimes remind people, like in my own company, it's my baby, like it's my website or it's my store. Like I can say it's got big ears. I can say it's ugly. It's my baby. It's yours too. And I think we can be critical. I think we can be provoking. Um, as long as we're always in the back of our mind as leaders, checking ourselves, like, are we managing ourselves? Are we being humane? Are we using humane language? And let the uncomfortability sit with people. This happens to me every week, and I sit there and I ruminate on the things that I said that I know kind of like, made some people maybe angry at me or uncomfortable around me. But it's amazing to me if you just give it a little time, like again, if I step over the line and I'm using inhumane language or inhumane tactics, that's I don't condone that. But as long as I can feel good about, like, the way that I delivered the message and whatnot, let it hang. Let the uncomfort sit. Don't just circle back and, apologize for exactly or remove the pressure you put on them. And it's amazing what comes back as I see people come back with follow-up meetings and I see people going the way that I think they should go, even though their first instinct was to push back or complain or kind of bristle against my provocation, criticism, or piece of advice.
Yeah, there's a couple things that I think we can employ so it does come from a good place. And I say this often. Look, what I'm about to say is coming from a place of love, not from ego. So the first thing it does is it makes me check myself. Is this coming from ego or am I actually coming from a good place? Right? Whatever I'm about to say.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, and I don't care if it's an employee or your kids, unsolicited advice goes over like a lead balloon. It just doesn't go well. So before you offer any unsolicited advice, get permission. Are you open to feedback? So let's just say afterwards, Shawn and I are talking about the show and I notice something. I might say, "Hey Shawn, are you open to some feedback about something on the show that might make it better?" Yeah, actually, because Shawn wants an amazing show, or I want it to be maybe I ask him as a, hey man, I'd love to be a better guest. Can you give me any feedback? But I'm giving him permission, or I'm ascertaining permission before I say whatever the heck is on my mind. When you do that, whether it's in a marriage or with your kids or with your coworkers, it will be so much more well received, more well received. It'll be well received if you actually gain permission before you just dive into this is how I'm feeling. And that's one of the things, as you were talking about, I was like, that's so good because you want to obviously come from a humane place. You want to be very respectful. And in order to do that, let's check our ego at the door. Let's make sure it is coming from a loving place, but let's also get permission so they're actually open to hearing what I'm about to say.
I love that. In fact, I'm making a note of it in my, so I have this, so I love tactics, right? And we talk a lot about principles and strategies in conversations like this, but I love sharing even tactics as granular as what you just shared, right? So, and I want to point out to anyone listening, like here you have a professional coach. I'm not a professional coach. I'm just a practitioner. I'm a leader in action that happens to have a podcast, but you have this professional coach giving you a very specific tactic. Hey, are you open to some feedback? And keep it focused on the outcome, right? Like we talked about at the top of the show. No one can argue with, people might be able to argue with Jordan wanting to set the scoring record of all time. No one's going to argue with Jordan trying to win a championship with his team. His team's not going to argue against that as coaches. The owners of the Bulls aren't, right? So if we stay focused on, hey, are you open to some feedback to drive a better end result for you? The answer is 99 out of 100 times going to be yes. And now you've opened the door to give feedback. And of course, then it's up to you to give it in a constructive and, humane way, whatever, even if it's pointed, even if it's critical. And I wrote that down. I have this little, back to tactics. Here's a meta tactic. So I talk a lot about how I review my own morning mantra every day. And after, I have these kind of just one-liners of key learnings. So I wrote that down in my little key learnings. And I see it almost every day. And I love this idea of asking, are you open for feedback? And even though it's a very specific tactic that JM just dropped on us, I think that's a very useful piece of advice. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man, my pleasure. What your morning mantra? I'm just curious because I'm such a big fan of mantras. We've been talking about kids quite a bit. It's something that I've taught my kids throughout. They've said the same evening mantra. What do you say every morning, brother? If you don't mind sharing.
It's long, and I and some of it's quite personal, and I share it kind of line by line on some of my socials. But as it relates to this topic, probably one of the most I don't know, it's 50 different little lines that they strung together in sort of a mantra, things I say to myself. And one of the lines that sticks with me often, that kind of finds its way into my mind throughout the day as it relates to, be Michael Jordan, is this one: I will not operate from a place of fear. So like if I ever recognize, oh my gosh, sales were off, or this or that's happening, or competition, some competitors doing this, or I just shut it down. I just shut it down. I refuse to operate from a place of fear. I will only operate from a place of optimism and abundance. So like, what can I do? Okay, what am I doing? What new product am I developing, or what new tactic am I chasing down? And I just refuse to let fear penetrate, and I'm not going to operate from there. And if you listen to Michael, I mean, that's the way. This is what I love about hardcore competitors. I had Urban Meyer on the podcast, who I learned a lot from because he got to coach at the University of Utah. He became close with Lev Sack. We trafficked, hung out together a little bit, and I was around him. And his attitude was very simple. Like, he looked at that team. He came to Utah, right, from already a storied football career, and we only had him for a couple of years. But his attitude was, "We will win every game." That's it. And by the way, he nearly did. Lost one game while he was there. But you compare that, to other coaches that preceded or even followed him, and it was like, hey, we're gonna show up well, we're gonna be competitive, we're gonna run a good program. But to look your team in the face and just say, we're gonna win every game. And listen, does Urban know he might lose a game somewhere? They might. Sure, he's a professional. He knows the stakes. Anything can happen in football or life or whatever. But it is absolutely astounding what attitude, what belief can do, especially leveraged from a place of leadership. But it requires the right mindset. And that's why I talk about be Michael Jordan. I'm talking about you. And by the way, whether you're a leader or not, whether you're a sub leader, whether you're a manager of one person, whether you're on your own, you got to start at the top. And if you get it right at the top, the rest will take care of itself. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about you. You are the CEO of your life. And whether it's morning mantras, your routine, meditation, prayer, books like the one you wrote, JM, books like the one I wrote, whatever, mentors, coaches, if you are in constant pursuit of becoming better, and you can get to a place where your attitude is, I am going to win, and you probably will.
Brother, I mean, incredible. I didn't know that Urban said that, but if you go back, and again, I remember them performing extremely well. Again, not a storied program traditionally, Utah, and he obviously took it to a very high level. To have the confidence, to have the courage to be that confident, because it comes from the amount of preparation. This going all the way back to Jordan. Again, Urban Jordan, these people can show up with that amount of confidence because of the amount of preparation that they put in, the amount of absolute attention to detail that they put into running that practice. And I think that's something, that's why I asked you about the mantra. That's the stuff that you're doing that nobody's going to probably see. That's for you in the dark. Those are the things that allow you to show up as the incredible version that you are because of that preparation. That's what gives you the courage and confidence to do that. So I love that he says that. And you know what? I get it often. Having a company, Let's Go Win, people always ask me, what does winning mean? I hear it all the time. And so what I had to figure out, Shawn, what does winning mean? When you look up winning, there's one word you're going to see over and over and over again. Self-love, self-care, self-development. This word self. It starts with you, yourself. What are you doing so that you can show up in whatever endeavor you're showing up as? Are you putting in that self-care? Are you putting in that self-development, that self-love, that self-growth? And that's the thing that, again, the Jordans of the world, the Urban Meyers, anybody that's accomplished some amazing things, it's that self-care and work that they were, self-development that they were willing to put in. That's how he has the confidence to say, we're going to win every single game. So there's just so much to that. And what a incredible opportunity to spend time with a true legend in college football.
Well, and I think that's the spirit of this podcast, right? Like, here I am pretty far into a career, and I just feel like still a kid. I just feel like I keep learning things. I learn things from you. I learn things from all these wonderful people on my podcast. I have mechanisms to try to capture some of these little learnings, like I just displayed to you, and in my weird way of noting certain things down and keeping track of them and even reviewing them. You can develop your own. You can steal my methods. You can steal your methods. People can steal your methods, JM. You can, but what we have to be is willing to basically, as Jordan did his whole career, just never take your foot off the gas. Like there isn't a time where it's kind of like, well, I've kind of made it. I've read all the book. I've read like every management book there is. I feel like I've read every leadership. I try to read them all, yours is on the way, like I continue to just try to take in everything I can. But again, we're constantly forgetting, and and beyond forgetting, we're constantly fighting apathy, our own demons, our own negativities. And that's the reason it's like we have to be constantly shoving down our throats, as it were, metaphorically speaking, more positivity, more personal development. And that's on the way to, remember, I am in like the furniture industry or the home category or whatever. And I'm still talking about me, to your point. I'm still talking about my personal development. And I expect the same from those around me. So my question to you is, in a business environment like this, where here I am encouraging people to go be Michael Jordan, how does one balance playing, their best game and being their Michael Jordan, whatever role they're in, without alienating their teammates?
It's a good question. For you to show up as your best, that shouldn't have any negative impact on someone else, right? There at no point, if I believe the ships rise, the tide rises, all ships. And so if you show up as the best, the Michael Jordan, you're absolutely rising everyone else around you. And that's why, it's interesting. I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and it was one of my best friends, and he was talking about a leader in his company that was kind of projecting this fear. And I said, based off what I'm hearing, brother, it sounds like a lot of insecurities are really being projected upon you. And I found it fascinating that you want to hire the best people, but often I'll find people want to hold on, like, I don't want them to take my role. Well, you absolutely want to hire the Michael Jordan. That is going to allow you to be the Phil Jackson, to be the Dean Smith.
Absolutely.
But brother, I can't tell you how many times that I see leaders almost try and squash that. Right? They want them to be really good, but then there's this fear
not
that
better
they're
than them.
right. So yeah, I think it's one of those things that when you have an open door policy where you're willing to talk about these things openly and say, look, I want you to show up as the very best version of you. That should have no ill effect on anyone around you.
Yeah.
In fact, it should just help everyone around you rise to your level. And I think that's ultimately what Jordan, what the Kobe's of the world did, right?
Yeah.
They brought people up to their level. And if you weren't going to be on it, they didn't show you the same respect. And I think that's where the challenge becomes. If you're giving 100% and somebody's giving 50%, that's where people get frustrated, and it's because they're showing up as the Jordan, and then you have somebody showing up as the, I don't know, the middle school.
By the way, it occurs to me, like, if you flip it and think about that scenario that you just described from the perspective of the candidate, if you feel frustrated because you feel like you're a Michael Jordan, you feel like you're doing all the things, you've developed your career, but you're not finding the spot or the organization to take you in, or the leader who will really adopt you and bring you in in good faith, don't be grateful for it. And what I mean by that, it is, as JM just described, highly common for leaders to be threatened by great talent. Now, the best leaders are not. And listen, I don't mean to put myself up there, but I can absolutely, without equivocation or performance, tell you that the people who work for me directly are heads and shoulders better than me in almost every way. And here I am, 26 years in, still CEO of my company, which I don't control from an ownership standpoint. We're a public company. I've lived through venture capital, private equity. I've had all kinds of ways that I could have been taken out or set aside along the way. And the only way that I maintain control is by being my version of Michael Jordan. And I say that with a lot of humility, meaning, like, what I do have to offer in the realms that I am uniquely good, I make sure that I bring it. But for everything else, I truly hire better than me. I mean, people with decades of experience that I never got. I was raised by wolves in the wild. These people have been raised by the Walmarts and, the Microsofts and the best corporations on planet Earth. And I get the chance to bring them here. And that should be wildly threatening to my career, because they are, on paper and in real life, sharper, smarter, more capable than me. But here I am, still in this seat. And that's evidence that you can hire better than you and let them own it, which is one of my little Shawnisms. And I will tell you also, as someone who's been on the other side of this, the leaders inside of my company who, over the arc of time, demonstrate that they can't do this, even if, by the way, I've had, let's call them Michael Jordans working for me that were so flipping good, but they built weak teams. And I think they might have built weak teams, whether they knew it or not, because of the fear that you're describing, right? Like, they didn't want someone to come in that might change things up or do things differently, or, really own, or maybe even make them look bad, in the sense that, but here's what's wild. Those people don't survive here. Yep. Ultimately, they must be removed, because they're stunting the growth of this organization. And it may take some time to suss that out, because they're so good at what they do. But if you want to judge, you should judge a leader by the strength of their team. And you should judge yourself as a leader by the strength of your team, and by no other metric, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, we've seen examples of it. If you want to go back, Lee Iacocca was that guy that absolutely had to have all the spotlight. Jack Welch early on was known as the greatest CEO ever, but when he left, GE fell apart. That's not a sign of great leader. If you leave and it falls, that means your leadership was terrible. And so I think there's been great examples of, the Steve Jobs of the world, or Elon Musk, where when they leave, the company continues to thrive. Microsoft was a great example that continued from Bill Gates to Ballmer to, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but they continue to grow. That's an example of great leadership, that bringing in talented people, and when you step aside, that your team not only stays the same, it continues to grow. That's a sign of a great leader.
Yeah, I agree. So, look, in the spirit of let me save you 25 years, saving a chunk off someone's own journey, what advice do you have for someone in the rookie season of their career? What's one game-changing piece of advice that you give someone that has a lot of road ahead of them?
I wrote on this not all that long ago. Be open and ask people around you so many questions. People that you look up to, that I wish that I had continued when I was 18, 21, 25. I remember at some points thinking, I don't need anybody else. How silly that sounds now. But being open to people around you that have accomplished things that you want to accomplish, don't be afraid to just go ask them, because there's so much gold in their advice. It will save you so much time. And just always continue to be open. Just like Shawn and I had never met before. Now I feel like, gosh, I can say, hey, Shawn, I'd love to ask you a question about blah, blah, blah. If I wasn't open to being on this podcast, I wouldn't have that opportunity. And now I have that opportunity. So it is funny, brother. I remember literally at like 25 or 26 saying, I don't need any more friends. I think how stupid that sounds now. I look back and I'm like, that is one of the most ignorant statements I've ever made. I can't believe I even thought that at one point, because there's almost 8 billion, 9 billion people in the world. There's always room for great human beings. So that is, if I was talking to my 18-year-old self, and I'm talking to you, want to save 25 years, be open and continue to keep your arms open to those incredible people.
Let me build on that. If you feel like asking something or saying something is going to make you look dumb or unprepared or maybe unworthy or something in the eyes of that mentor, leader, whatever, it's the opposite. Everyone is flattered by the opportunity to mentor, teach, give advice, whatever. And as someone who sometimes gets asked questions like this, I never judging that person like, oh man, you're dumber than I thought. I can't believe you don't know this already. I'm only thinking about how I can answer the question. And in fact, my opinion of you goes way up. And it's the weird psychology of it. And so what you think makes you look vulnerable or weak does the opposite. It makes you look strong. And I can tell you that by often being on the other side of that, just by virtue of my title or, whatever. And so I appreciate that piece of advice. One last thing. What's one habit people can start tomorrow to build that MJ work ethic that you talk about in their career?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of really in the morning, just taking care of you. And so I would say bare minimum 15 minutes, guys. Take care of your mind, your body, and your soul. If you do 5 minutes a piece, that focus just for those 15 minutes. I'm talking to every single person, especially if you have kids. So many of my female clients, I ask, what did you do for yourself today? And all they talk about is their kids, the husband, the car. And I'm like, no, you. Yeah. Take care of you. Give yourself that self-care for 15 minutes at a minimum. Hopefully you can give yourself a bit more. That's going to allow you to show up as the best version of you.
Yes. And what's misperceived as maybe selfishness has the opposite effect, because showing up as the best person of yourself, showing up as the Michael Jordan of you is good for everyone. Just ask the 1990s Bulls. I don't think any of them would trade it for a minute. Even Scotty. Look, be sure to follow JM on LinkedIn. Be sure to check out his podcast, Let's Go Win Podcast. The Let's Go Win Podcast, it's out on every platform, including YouTube, of course. And for everything else, JM, check out his website, letsgowin.com. Thank you so much to the sage of success, the professional expert of positive energy, the starter of SELF, the SELF program, which you got to look into himself, JM Ryerson. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
And remember, for all of you listening, don't just settle for being on the team. Be the player that they can't imagine stepping onto the court without. The one that changes the game for everyone every time you show up. It just may save you a chunk off your own 25-year journey. Thanks.
My trip that I do once a year to take my friends away should not be the budget for your bike across America.
TikTok has become an aggregator for some of the dumbest human actions.
When I won that million, I was $2 million in debt, barely hanging on.